Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Professor Joash Amukpito, has been appointed, or nominated rather, as the chairman of INEC. Professor Bola Tinubu presented Amukpito's name following the exit of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who served as INEC chairman from 2015 to October 2025. Professor Amukpito, aged 58, hails from Ayeto Rogbede in Kogi State, making him the first nominee from the North Central State to head the electoral body. President Tinubu described him as a political and highly qualified. A professor of law at the University of Jos, Amukpito specializes in company law and corporate governance and currently serves as the university's Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration. Council members unanimously backed the nomination, with Kogi State Governor Usman Ododo calling him a man of integrity. His name will be forwarded to the Senate for screening. Well, following the nomination of Professor Joash Amukpito as the new chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, conversations are growing around electoral reforms, credibility, and public trust in Nigeria's democracy. Now, to help us unpack the implications of this pivotal appointment, we're joined by Hamzat Lawal, the founder of Connected Development, a Chevening scholar and currently a master's student at the University of Sussex Institute of Development Studies. He is a renowned governance advocate and grassroots mobilizer with deep insight into Nigeria's democratic landscape. Hamzat, it's great to have you on Standpoint.
Good afternoon, Nigerians.
All right, so my first question will be, how do you interpret President Tinubu's disappointment of Professor Amukpito as INEC chairman, a strategic reform or a political chess?
Well, I think that, again, in our democracy, we cannot allow for gaps. So it's great that he has been nominated by the president and accepted by the Council of State. But I think most importantly, this should be seen as a test of Nigeria's democratic maturity. And not just about the appointment, but this is also a challenge to ask. And to also ask, what kind of electoral leadership do we need for the next decade? Because I believe that this nomination come at a time when citizens' trust on electoral institution is low. And most importantly, his first task must be to rebuild that trust, especially amongst marginalized communities. And how do they feel democracy? And because there's a feeling that democracy no longer represents them. So this comes at a time where, there's that trust deficit. But most importantly, I think there's an opportunity here, particularly because when you look at Professor's pedigree, it comes with a knowledge around constitutional law, the rule of law, and he's a practitioner, a legal practitioner, and someone who has also transferred knowledge to younger people. But he would not be judged by his academic prowess. He'll be judged by how he is able to administer what INEC should do. Is he going to be seen as a political appointee, or would he be seen as the person who is an independent umpire or charging independent umpireship of that very critical institution?
All right, so I understand your sentiment, but one question everywhere is this now: can he be truly independent when his appointment came from a president who many view his political party dominating the system?
Yes, he can be independent. His leadership must go beyond Abuja. His leadership must go to the grassroots and must ensure inclusion. How are we ensuring that we do not disenfranchise people? Because you see, at the grassroots, that's where you have elections won, lost, and most importantly, or sometimes manipulated. So I think that he can be independent. And this, again, is a test to his person, his credibility, his integrity, and what would inform his legacy as a person who would contribute his own quota to Nigeria's democracy. It is constitutionally for the president to nominate, and it's also constitutional for the Senate to either approve or disapprove. But I think that there is no reason for the Senate to reject his nominee because he's not one who has soiled his hand in Nigerian's politics. He's apolitical. But I also think that he can also lead the charge on electoral reform. Because one thing I expect him to do is also to do an audit, what has happened since Nigeria's uh, young and emerging democracy from 1999, taking lessons from all the other electoral chairmen and look at what are the gaps, what are the opportunities, and what kind of reform do we need in terms of legal and regulatory framework, and approach the National Assembly. But I think his first test would be the Anambra election in November, because that would give a filler on, okay, what we would expect in 2027 general elections. But I think most importantly, I think he's the right person for the job, and I think he can do it if he put his heart to it. And he must see civil society as his number one partner, civil society and the media, particularly platforms like Usabi that can give you real-time information on what's happening before election, during election, and post-election. And I also think that when he does this audit, the gaps that has been identified, over the decade, this logistics. That's one of our biggest electoral problem, logistics and the role of technology. And I think we need to be careful here when we look at technology, because most time, because of some people's exposure, they think that, oh, technology is the answer or is the solution. Come to think of it, what about the people at the grassroots? What about the people that don't have access to internet connectivity or even the infrastructure to integrate into technology? Because if you look at data, how many millions of people in Nigeria have access to data or have access to smartphone? Even if we know that yes, technology play a role to ensure that we don't have multiple voting. But I think that most importantly, his role is to ensure that no one is disenfranchised, particularly people with disability, women and young people. And these are people that inform mostly the outcome of elections.
You seem to be very confident in his leadership.
Yes, I think that Nigeria is at a place where we must continue to give hope. And when we see people who have worked hard to not only build their pedigree, but also people who have been put forward to serve, the least we can do is to give them benefit of doubt. I believe that good things can actually come from Nigeria. And Professor Amopita could become a case study that we can showcase that truly our election has integrity, it's fair, it's free. And this would also help us reduce the number of litigation we would have post-elections. So yes, I would give him confidence. And as a civil society leader, we would support him to succeed. Because if he succeeds, mind you, it means Nigeria is succeeding. So this is not about him. This is about our country.
All right. So like you had mentioned earlier, his first test will be the Anambra election. But does his appointment inspire confidence? Look, as we go into the Anambra elections, other elections that will come out then, the 2027 elections. Now, does this inspire confidence? Does it will it show INEC's neutrality in all of this?
Yes, I think that his appointment, and I've followed the conversation since his name was mentioned or announced during the Council of State meeting. Even members of opposition, interestingly, I've seen them defend him because I see that there's some level of misinformation, disinformation, and fake news around his nomination and candidacy, which is really sad, from mischief makers, of course. But I've seen opposition strong voices, trying to clarify and saying, yes, we're members of opposition, but we must ensure that we tell the Nigerian people the truth. Because a lot of them have said he's apolitical. Nobody can tie him to any political party, which is really good. And this would encourage and inspire people, but most importantly, it's an opportunity to rebuild back trust, to take power particularly back to the people and ensure no one is disenfranchised. I'm particularly happy, and from all the feelers I've gotten so far, this is actually a good one for our electoral integrity and building institutions beyond just one person. And speaking about institution, INEC is an institution. As much as she's an electoral empire, she's an institution that would continue to manage our electoral process. And I think that one thing Professor Amopita needs to do is how does he manage bureaucracy? Because you see, there are people within those institutions that have the history, the knowledge, and understanding of it. But we know that everyone has a bias. But how do we ensure that we are able to manage those biases, particularly by the bureaucrats, and ensure that they see things from a perspective of Nigeria first and serving the interest of the population, particularly the electorate?
So, looking at Amugbito's legal background and public service record, do you think he's equipped for the complexities of Nigeria's electoral systems?
Oh, yes, I think he's more than equipped. This is someone who have a background in law, understands the rule of law. He understands, he's a constitutional lawyer, and he's currently even the deputy dean and the law school in the University of Jos, so in Plateau State. So I think it's more than qualified. This is a professor, I'm currently a student, and, in the academics, to be a professor, it's not a child's play. So I think he's more than equipped. I think he's qualified. And I think we must rally around support for him so that he continues to remain apolitical and he continues to survive the pressure that would come from Abuja.
That's a very strong one. And with his kind of pedigree, is he equipped for that kind of pressure?
Yeah, I think so. Again, it's about what does he want people to remember him for? Because you see, the life itself is a transition. And now he's transitioning from academics into this position of authority and power to manage our electoral body. And also, during election, the INEC chairman is one of the most powerful people in the country because he would be the one who is the returning officer for presidential elections. So he was the one that would make history and announce to the Nigerian people and the world who would become our president in 2027. But I think is ready. I think is equipped. And I think that whatever he decides, and I'm very confident he will not compromise because you see, again, for civil society, our role is to demand for accountability and transparency as much as he would have the constitutional powers. But, people would watch. The media as a watchdog would also report. The Nigerian people would be the one to testify about his leadership. And I believe that he wants his name to be written in gold.
All right, so many Nigerians believe asking the question about electoral reforms now. Do you think Nigeria is overdue for reforming how electoral commissioners are appointed to protect the sanctity of the process?
You see, there's different views around who should appoint an electoral national commissioner and the INEC chairman, and the kind of reform we want to see. Mind you, reform, it's continual because the INEC we have today is not the INEC we have in 1999. It's not the INEC we have in 2003. It's not the INEC we have in 2015. Reform upon reform has happened. You see, Uwe's report is clear that we should allow the judicial council or institute to appoint the chairman. But you see, again, we all have biases. But I think that as we continue this reform, society itself would purge and say maybe we should also elect the INEC chairman. Maybe we should allow it in constitution to allow the president to nominate and the Senate to screen. But then again, as long as there's separation of power, when I talk about separation of power, how does the executive interfere with the legislature and also the judiciary? And how do we also ensure that after this nomination and Senate clearance and he's sworn into office, how do we also ensure that there are no interference between how the executive or the power brokers in Abuja interfere with the constitutional mandate of the INEC chairman and the institution that he leads? As long as there's separation of power and there are no interferences, I think that allowing the president the power to nominate, and particularly if you look at the nomination, he presented it to the Council of State and it was anonymously accepted because he's apolitical. We've seen previous kind of appointment where people would even hit to the streets and protest, but no one has even, signaled that and even voices strongly from the opposition, even support of this appointment. I think if we see this kind of appointments more often, this would send confidence in our very young and emerging democracy. They say that, you see, everything is not political. And come to think of it, everyone cannot be political. And what is important is to recruit the right kind of people with the right kind of not only skills, but character, integrity. And you see a lot of people, a lot of elites have, put their weights behind it. And it's for him not to disappoint, particularly the people at the grassroots, because again, that is where elections are won, that is where they are lost, and that is where they are often manipulated.
But talking about public trust now, what can the new INEC chairman do to win public trust?
I think one is they should embrace open governance. And what do I mean? How is he able to proactively disclose information? Because you see, most time we don't even have election data. And when do you want to build trust? You must be open, you must proactively share knowledge and information. And because with this era of technology, fake news, misinformation, and disinformation, but also open to public scrutiny and public accountability. But I think most importantly, he would be judged for not how he managed politicians, but how well he empowers citizens. And in empowering citizens, he must be approachable. He must continue to engage, particularly people in civil society, in media, security agency, because you see, when you look at elections, it's not just INEC that is one of the critical elements. Security institutions and agencies play a critical role. Civil society play a role, and our international friends and partners. But I think for him is to really redefine, how does he want to be remembered? But most importantly, integrate an open government policy where there's, election data, where there are disaggregated data, they're readily available, and he's working closely with the media and civil society to galvanize and build trust and bring citizens closer to what INEC's mandate is.
Okay, so in all of these things, what should be the place of the Nigerian people?
For the Nigerian people, beyond going to get registered, collecting your permanent voter's card, coming out on election day and cast your ballot, their place is to see this democracy as our own and to participate in this democracy. Beyond just election is how do we hold government to account and how do we continue to engage as citizens, as people that are redefining, our political history. So for the Nigerian people, do not be despair. Yes, a lot have been promised, little have been given, but then democracy itself would continue to evolve. And most importantly, if you don't participate, then you leave the corridors of power to people who are a few minority. Because when you look at it, it's only in elections and the PVC that gives us equity. Everyone is entitled to one vote, including Mr. President. So my call for the Nigerian people is continue to participate, because the more you participate, the more you hold leaders to account, the more results we get, and the better it will be for you and I.
All right, so what do you think his appointment signals about the 2027 general elections?
Or it signals that there are no gaps. His appointment shows that there's no leadership gap within the institution, and that Nigeria is working and preparing to ensure that we have a free, fair, and credible elections. And this is something that we would, the Anambra election, something we would use to test how ready is INEC and what kind of leadership should we expect in the lead up to the 2027 general elections with Professor Amopita, and the helms of affairs.
Do you have a sense that these elections coming up in Anambra State is it might just be a flood of it might just be a lot for him to handle, looking at the fact that he's just new at the helm of affairs?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so because again, Anambra election is a standalone election. It's just one state. They'll be able to deploy a lot of manpower, both security-wise and even INEC officials and civil society, even the media. So I don't think it should be overwhelming for him. And come to think of it, he has national commissioners who are already embedded in the institution, who provide guidance and insight for the kind of decisions he'll make. So I don't think it will be overwhelming for him.
Okay, so what if you were to give him an advice on just tell him one thing to handle beyond logistics that you mentioned earlier, what would that be?
I think his tenure could mark a new social contract between citizens and the ballot. And for me, is how does he protect that ballot? Because that ballot would redefine who leads us. And I think his leadership would also inspire what kind of leaders do we want to have in the corridors of power? And what are the roles that INEC play to ensure that the people's voice actually counts and it does matter in our very young and emerging democracy?
All right, founder of Connected Development, Chevening Scholar, and currently you're doing your master's at the University of Sussex Institute of Development Studies. How has it been going back to school?
It's been really challenging, but most importantly exciting, because I'm here studying governance, public policy, and development. And this conversation actually informed what I'm currently studying. But interestingly, I'm a practitioner with experience working for close to 2 decades. But I think for me, it's a good reflection to learn more. In my class, we have people from over 30 countries. So they diverse view. There's always debate of disagreement and agreement. But the beauty of academics is your evidence. It's what would make your own argument supersede your opponent. And it's quite interesting here in the city of Brighton. As you can see, I'm wearing about 4 clothes. It's quite cold. Winter is coming.
And you've had to take tea regularly. So now, one particular question I had in mind regarding the appointment of the INEC chair is that should the opposition parties be worried about this appointment?
Why should they be worried? They have no cause to be worried. I think that most importantly, this appointment has shown that the president has shown maturity to put someone who is apolitical. So they should do their homework if they really want to seize power in 2027 and not worry about the leadership of INEC.
All right, founder of Connected Development, Hamza Lawal, thank you so much for giving us your view on this development. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Goodbye.
Well, that's Standpoint this week. Remember, you can watch the repeat broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight and 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. Thanks for watching. I am Theophil.